Okay, so now I want to talk about Playco, your new company, which had a successful Series A, 100 million of funding. Before we go into specific, could you tell me, what Playco is again?
So Playco is focused on something very, very simple. That seems so simple that it almost seems like it shouldn't be enough to go and build a huge company on. It's a very basic idea, which is you should be able to play games with your friends very easily. And so I started alluding to this earlier and the very beginning of the podcast, but turns out it's such an obvious thing to say. People want to play with their friends. Everybody would agree with this. And the market for this is literally everyone. If you just say people want to play with their friends, this is everyone. My grandmother, your grandmother, everybody wants to interact and have positive interactions with the people they care about, whether it's family, friends, or people that just they want to connect with, right? And it's just too difficult to do right now. And because it's too difficult, it's actually surprisingly uncommon. And so you have this thing that if you could successfully make it work in the way that it should, and that's easy enough, that it could be something that we all do and that we all do regularly. We're on Zoom right now, and Zoom solved the problem of how do you make video chat easy? Right. It's not just coronavirus that makes us all using video chat right now. It's also that Zoom really solved the problem. I mean, video chat has been around for over 10 years, right? Right. And in many ways, it's been buggy. It's been very difficult to use, and so people didn't use it. But even before coronavirus, Zoom was growing like crazy because they figured out how to make it so easy. You just drop a link, tap it, and you're chatting. And it's so predictable the way that it works. And so if you think about Zoom, they have that link that you just send, and you never worry about is he on an iPhone or what is he using and what is he gonna have to do? And we're building that experience for games. And what that means is that you can just hop into a game with me just as predictably as you could expect me to jump on Zoom without any issues. Except for I would go one step further and say that it'll be even easier for you to play a game using our tech than Zoom, because Zoom, some people still download the app, right? You can use it in a web browser, but a lot of people still use the app. And our games, it's not even necessary. And so we're excited about the new experiences that we'll create, because we all have these mobile devices with messengers and with video chat on them. And what other types of experiences can we have now that we're in these spaces together? What types of things do we want to be doing in a Zoom chat together? I've seen people going and playing poker games where they all say, okay, everybody load up this URL in your web browser and we'll all go to this website together and play poker together. Why isn't that part of the experience right in front of us? Why isn't it integrated into this experience? It's something that's easy for us to do. These are the problems we're going out and solving. So we're working with a bunch of these partner companies that have these social services, whether it's messengers or video chats and other types of social services, and just trying to figure out what is the best experience for each of these, and what types of activities do people want to do in this space? How can we help people connect in a way that's more meaningful?
Right. So, and you team up with Michael Carter. And when I heard that news about 2 weeks ago on TechCrunch, I was blown away. And because I knew by Michael, he has a really good experience in venture capital industry, but also he started Game Closure. And Game Closure was pretty much doing a very similar thing, right? You can play game on the HTML. And he moved his company, which was in the Bay Area, to Japan because what he told me was that because there are bigger markets for gaming in Japan. Why Playco was founded in Japan? Was it for the same reason?
Well, it's a great question. What I'll say in general is that game companies have been already recently, the largest game companies have been growing outside of the US. So when we think about the biggest, most exciting recent game companies that have been invested in or have just been making a lot of news, we think about Playrix, they're in Europe. We think about Wildlife, they're in Latin America. These companies, probably of the top 10 game companies right now that are sort of private, large, fast-growing mobile game companies, the majority of them are no longer in the US. So this transition has happened. It's already been happening. And so what we're seeing is that this talent is everywhere. And in a world where this talent is really everywhere, and they're learning and they're excelling at these different companies all around the world now, like how should a company be architected to succeed when that's the future? And so, 13, 14 years ago, maybe the answer was start a company in San Francisco.
Right.
Do that. But today, I don't think that's the answer, actually. And so it's already playing out that these companies are succeeding in a very big way. And so what we wanted to do was figure out, how do we take advantage of this idea and this fact that there are great people all around the world? And I think having a strong presence in Japan is huge, because there's such a rich history of gaming here. There's some of the best gaming companies in the world, and the talent, like, of creating these characters and these stories that I mentioned before. This is something that's Japan is the leader in the world in this type of business. And so what inspired me is, I think that there's an opportunity to work with the best people in Japan and work with the best people in Silicon Valley, and then to have sort of one leg in Silicon Valley and one leg in Japan, and then be distributed everywhere in the world, and build this sort of new type of company where we have a strong base in places that are really important, but then we also have employees that are everywhere. And so we've been building the company in this distributed fashion, and we have a lot of employees in many, many different countries all around the world now, and we work remotely. We're growing very quickly during the age of COVID, and all done over video chat.
Maybe that's the new definition of the new international startup, right? One leg in Silicon Valley and one leg in Japan, because US is a still really big market. If you kind of have a kind of monopoly in the US, you can go bigger in the international market, but also you need to cover Asia market, right? Especially in the gaming. Understood. And okay, I have another two final questions. So another one would be, you raised $100 million for Series A. That's a big raising, especially for the venture industry in Japan. What's the $100 million for, rather than the stuff that you mentioned, something that you're building right now? You already hired 75 people, right? So I assume a lot of things are going to go on there, but could you tell us something that you can tell here?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we're thinking about this from a very long-term perspective, right? And so the people and the partners that we have, they understand that. And it's not that what we're doing is super capital intensive, like we're going to go build one giant game that requires $100 million to build. It's more like we have so much interesting territory we need to explore, that that it's all very, very compelling. Not like we're searching for something that'll work. It's like we have a lot of things. We're very confident that they'll work and that people are going to love, and we want to make sure we're making progress on a bunch of them. And so I earlier I said at Zynga we had this, we had many games that succeeded before we got to FarmVille, and we're still in the early stages of Playco, where we have products out already, actually, that are succeeding, and we're just not ready to talk about them yet. And then we're learning a lot from those, and we're going to keep learning and keep iterating and releasing more and discovering more, like how these things work. And our hope is that we're learning something from everything we release, whether it's a feature or a game. We're always making progress toward fulfilling our vision as we're describing it, right? And someday, maybe in a few years, we have our FarmVille, and all of a sudden there's a game that has over 1 billion people playing it at once. And it sounds crazy, but we think it's achievable. Back when FarmVille came out, we had 3/4 of everybody on Facebook was playing the game. And if that happened today, with how big the ecosystem is, it would be something like over 2 billion people would be playing this game. And so the fact that people haven't been able to achieve that has to do with the structure of the mobile games market. The way all the games are distributed now is only through advertising. And that's very limiting in the sense that the only way to grow faster is to make more revenue for each user that comes, and then you can reinvest that in advertising. And there's nothing wrong with this model, except for the fact that it actually incentivizes developers not to make games that you can play with your friends. So, and this isn't obvious to most people, but every player that you purchase through an ad that doesn't spend money will lower the amount of money you make per player. And so if I bought 2 users and one of them spends money and one of them doesn't, well, that person who doesn't is lower the average amount of money that I made per user, right? And so the game companies have become excellent at targeting the players who are likely to spend money. And a lot of the ad technology has been about making that easier to do and more precise. The unfortunate side effect of this is not everyone wants to spend money in games. And so when you want to play with your friends, if they're not a spender, well, then they're not getting the advertisement. And so if you've ever wondered, why do I play this game and none of my friends play it? It's because everybody's being targeted for the exact thing that's right for them. And no one's focused on making a game that everyone can play together, because the economics don't work with this current advertising ecosystem. And so we need to figure out the technology and the design around an ecosystem that will support people to discover these games in a way that's very frictionless and low cost. And so those are the problems that we're solving. And when we solve that, then we can go and make games that people can play with their friends.